It's Halloween, and with the Daily Wire's famous Halloween party in full swing, it's time for us to announce our winners for the best costumes of the year. The prize for the scariest costume goes to the child dressed up as Jim Acosta. Or maybe it is Jim Acosta. How would we know the difference? But anyway, the Jim Acosta costume includes a mask with a face in a permanent expression of sanctimonious self-seriousness, topped with hair that magically goes from salt and pepper to pitch black after just a little dab of narcissism. Jim is having fun terrifying the neighbors by stomping zombie-like through public gatherings, chanting in the guttural voice of the living dead, "Look at me, I'm Jim Acosta, look at me," until everyone laughs, then gets bored with him and goes home. The ribbon for the funniest costume goes to the two pranksters who dressed up as a centaur with the head of CNN's Don Lemon, with one person dressed as the horse's ass and the other as the centaur's tail. I'll pause to let you get that. As a fun Halloween game, we surrounded the Lemon Centaur with conservatives and watched him prance around shouting, "Everyone who disagrees with me is racist," until somebody finally canceled the cable service and the Lemon Centaur vanished into complete obscurity, leaving everyone to wonder if he had ever really existed in the first place, and if so, why. The plastic trophy for most ridiculous costume goes to the lady who dressed up as Hillary Clinton for president in 2020. Wearing a dyed blonde wig and a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay, Hillary spent most of the party stumbling around, giving each and every guest a different excuse for why she lost the last election. She then explained her motivation for taking yet another shot at the White House by saying, quote, "I sacrificed every scrap of dignity I had to get this gig. That's why," unquote. After which she did a face plant into the rum punch, where she remained for the rest of the evening. Happy Halloween from the Daily Wire. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, happy Halloween. Some of you may think I'm not wearing a costume, but in fact, I am Michael Knowles. No, I don't wear a costume for the simple reason that I'm a grown-ass man. That's why we're gonna have the wonderful Jenna Ellis on to talk about this birthright citizenship thing and a lot of other, and the mailbag. Of course, it's the mailbag. Oh my God, it's the mailbag day. And talking about something really scary, Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, November 6th. Don't miss our next episode of Daily Wire Backstage, the election edition. The God King, Jeremy Boring, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Elisha Krauss, and me will be covering all the latest election news as it happens, so be sure to tune in. As always, only Daily Wire subscribers get to ask the questions. Everyone can watch, but only Daily Wire subscribers get to ask questions. So make sure you subscribe today, get Another Kingdom, get the Leftist Tears mug, get all the good stuff we give to you. Podium. Here's the thing. There are lots of businesses you go to that you love, but you never leave reviews, right? So I'll go to the dentist. I love my dentist. He keeps my head on straight, makes me look good. But it never occurs to me to think, hey, maybe I should go on and find some place where I can leave a review. Podium is a system for businesses to connect with their customers. It's like a middleman between businesses and the customers that facilitates customers interacting with the business. If you are a business, you want Podium, they will go out. You know that 83% of happy customers are willing to leave a review, but only 23% actually do. So one of the things Podium will do is it will contact customers and say, were you happy? Would you mind leaving a review? And Podium users see a 6% increase in revenue just from reviews because Podium is helping them get in touch with their customers. So reviews matter, and the way you show up online determines who shows up at your door. So go to podium.com/Klavan for 10% off a monthly subscription. Become the obvious choice online by going to podium.com/Klavan to get started and save 10%. And you can ask all your customers, how do you spell Klavan? And as one, they will rise up and say Klavan. So many of you have noticed with the election coming close, the news coverage has begun to look kind of like this.
I'm hysterical. I'm having hysterics. I'm hysterical. I can't stop when I get like this. I can't stop. I'm hysterical.
And we know for most of that actually was a cut from CNN. We know that the reason the media does this is they're trying to cause this fog of crisis and hysteria, make everybody think that things are going terribly, something's wrong. They want Democrats to show up. They want Democrats to be upset, the people out of power because they're Democrats, and they want to suppress the Republican vote. And we have this kind of larger responsibility not to just react. We have a responsibility to, when I talk about the culture, I always talk about how conservatives ignore the culture. The culture is not just the movies. It's not just talk shows. It's the way we live. It's the way we behave. It's the way we behave toward one another. It's the way we behave in public. It's the way we behave with our families and how we treat our families. I mean, it doesn't matter. I see these guys going around like, the moral world is collapsing. Our sexual mores have collapsed, but at least I'm getting laid. That's the thing. You go like, wait a minute. If you want to rebuild the culture, you got to start with yourself. Each of us carries a piece of the culture. So it's our job. It is our job, especially here on the Andrew Klavan Show, to step back, look at the bigger picture, look at what is being talked about in context so we can make moral choices, because the left is basically and has been for many years running a morality scam. They have been putting on the idea that somehow we are violating the moral code by being conservatives, by pushing for freedom, for pushing for the Constitution, whereas they, oh my goodness, what moral fellows they are. So we'll talk about that in terms of this birthright citizenship. Trump is saying he would like to issue an executive order to repeal the birthright citizenship, which seems to be, on the surface of it, guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, which was the amendment passed in 1868 to ensure that slaves were not, the ex-slaves would have citizenship, would not be kept out of citizenship by evil Democrats who were trying to, who were trying to change the outcome of the Civil War. See, Democrats would never do that now. What they said then was they said, the Civil War doesn't count because Abraham Lincoln was colluding with Russia. That's what they said. They would never do anything like that now, like try and overturn an election by spreading lies and spreading conspiracy theories. No, they would never do that. But they did that then. So, so all of that is causing panic and all this, and we'll talk to Jenna about it from a constitutional point of view. But my point is simply this. There's two things that the press wants to do as the election comes close. They want to spread a crisis, an atmosphere of crisis. They've been trying to do this for 2 years, and they want you to think that moral questions are on the line that you will violate by voting Republican. That's very important to them. Just before I get into this a little bit deeper, I want to just play this one montage that's been going around the internet, which I just love, which is a montage of how they have covered Trump in the first 2 years, in the first couple of years. This is just cuts from mainstream media. I think this is cut 6, right? Yeah.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
The beginning of the end of the Trump presidency.
Trump will resign.
Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
It was the beginning of the end today.
The beginning of the end.
It reminds me a lot of the last days of Nixon.
Breaking news tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The walls closing in.
The walls closing in.
Breaking overnight bombshell.
This is a very dramatic day, and I think it might be near a tipping point. Do you think this is a tipping point?
This is unbelievable. This is remarkable. Have you ever seen anything like this?
His presidency is crippled.
December 1st, 2017, you can mark it down. This is the day that everything changed.
We begin with the bombshell.
The beginning of the end?
The beginning of the end.
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 In fact, if this were a football game, we're in the third quarter. May even be the beginning of the end.
It's amazing with all those bombshells falling that America's still standing. That's the tenor of reporting when a Republican is in office, amped up for Trump, right? It's always been like this. It is always, oh my God, the lies. Remember, every soldier who came home from Iraq, that was another tragedy. And of course, it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy, but it's also the nature of war. And the number of soldiers who died compared to other wars was, in keeping with small wars. That's what it was. But it was utter panic all the time. Now it's Trump. So Trump foments it himself because he likes it. He knows that while they're paying attention to they're chasing their own tails around, he knows he can get a lot done. But I want to point out, before we get to Jenna and the birthright citizenship thing, I just want to point out there's a race going on in New Jersey where Bob Menendez is running to keep his Senate seat. Now, I don't think there's been a Republican senator in New Jersey, a very blue state, for 50 years. I don't think they've had a Republican senator for 50 years. So the Democrats are pouring money into this race. They are pouring money to keep Menendez in his seat. And it's a very close race. He's up against a Bob Hugin, I think his name is Hugin, maybe. He's an ex-pharmaceutical executive. Now, remember who Menendez is, right? This is a guy who was investigated. There was substantial corroborated evidence that he was doing favors for his pal, a Florida ophthalmologist, Solomon Melgen. And in response to this, Melgen was taking him on trips to the Dominican Republic, and they were sleeping with underage prostitutes, all right? They were sleeping with underage prostitutes, and there was a lot of evidence of this, a lot of corroborated evidence. And he went on trial for corruption, not just for this, but for all kinds of corruption, and the jury deadlocked, and they dropped the case, okay? But the Senate Select Committee on Ethics severely admonished him. There's no question that some of this stuff was going on. He's obviously just barely escaped. He only barely escaped being convicted. Remember Roy Moore? Okay, so he's accused credibly, with corroboration, of sleeping with underage prostitutes, right? So let's go back to Roy Moore, who was in that special election to become senator in Alabama, right? And there were unsupported allegations that 40 years before, as a younger man, he had dated very young women, maybe one of them underage, because remember the age limit then was very low, so he was within the law most of the time, and these were uncorroborated. Now, I said at the time, I don't like Roy Moore. I don't like him for his politics. I don't like him because I think he's phony. I have all kinds of reasons for not liking him. I didn't know anything about whether these charges were true. But what I said is we cannot lose that vote. We should elect him and then censure him, then throw him out. But first elect him, do not lose the seat, because the seat is what matters. Remember the absolute wave of moral indignation that this man, here's just one sample, is Stephen Colbert doing a whole 5-minute routine about this.
And now we've learned that in the 80s, when he was a local assistant district attorney, Moore was banned from an Alabama shopping mall for bothering teenage girls. The only place in the mall the girls was safe was Forever 21, because that is way too old for Roy Moore. Okay,
so fair enough. That's a joke. Here's Colbert on Bob Menendez. Yeah, suddenly it doesn't matter. Suddenly it doesn't matter a damn bit. The New Jersey Star-Ledger, here's their editorial endorsing Bob Menendez. Choke it down and vote for Menendez. Before he was caught in 2015, Senator Robert Menendez broke Senate rules by routinely accepting expensive gifts, including private jets to luxury resorts abroad. He kept those gifts secret, breaking another rule. He then used his office to promote the personal and business interests of the man who paid the bills. All that was the unanimous conclusion of the Senate Ethics Committee, including all the Democrats. It's a miracle that Menendez escaped criminal conviction, but vote for him. Come on, we need the vote. We need the vote. So all that posing from not just the news media, not just that, but also from Colbert, also from the entire entertainment media. They were so shocked that Roy Moore may have put his hand on the bra of a young girl when he was a younger man legally. They were so shocked. Nothing. Crickets. It's a scam. It's the morality scam. It is all about power. Let me tell you another scam. Another scam is this healthcare thing. The Democrats want to make this election about healthcare. And this is the curse of John McCain. John McCain, after promising he was going to help repeal Obamacare, delivered the one vote that saved Obamacare, putting the Republicans in the bad position of having to chip away at it, which causes other problems instead of completely reforming it. However, all what they're talking about is that, and you know how they always say, every civilized country has universal health care. That is a lie. Every civilized country leeches off our health care. We pay 180% of the price, what they pay for important medications. Okay, we pay 180% more than they pay for important medications. And Trump issued a kind of stupid idea for curbing this by basically price controls. That's not going to work. The problem is because they have universal health care, there's only one person there for the pharma companies to negotiate with. And what they say is, this is what we're going to pay, and if you don't like it, we're going to break down the medicine and put out a copy, because we won't abide by your copyright laws. We'll just put out patent laws. We'll put out our own copy. So they have to let them pay less, so we pay more. We are paying for their health care. That's what universal health care is. It's America paying for Europeans' health care. And by the way, the other thing is because the pharma companies can't make money, it's very expensive to invest in research because most research fails. So because they can't make money, they don't give them as many drugs as we get. Of 74 cancer drugs launched between 2011 and 2018, right? 95% of them are available here. 74% of them are available in the UK, 49% of them are available in Japan, 8% are available in Greece. So what the government is saying to people is everybody gets care, but it's crap. Everybody gets care, but you die. You die because we don't have the drugs, because we won't pay for the drugs, because we can't afford the drugs, because the government is paying for the drugs, instead of having a free market system that would bring the drugs down to their normal price. If we had a worldwide, global free market system, we would not have this problem, right? So all of this stuff, the sex stuff, the healthcare stuff, this moral posing, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. The thing is, you got to decide what you're for. You got to decide what politician you're going to plug in there who's going to get you what you're for. That's all it's about. And then you have to live the moral life. You have to live the life you expect people to live and teach it to your superiors, these guys, these clowns who are in office. Let's talk. Is Jenna here? There she is, right in the Jenna spot. Amazing. Jenna Ellis, the director of the Dobson Policy Center, the author of the legal basis for a moral constitution, and a birthday girl, right? Is tomorrow your birthday?
Tomorrow is.
Happy birthday. We're glad we would have brought you a cake, but none of us can do anything. So we have no capability to make a cake.
Okay, well, the birthday wish is much appreciated. Thanks.
All right. Well, listen, let's talk about this thing. You've written an article basically saying that Trump wins just by bringing up the birthright citizenship idea. This is the idea that no matter who you are, break into the country, have a baby, the baby's a citizen, right?
Yeah, and that's really obviously a legal fraud. And the fact that we have been perpetuating this policy through really misconstruing the language of the 14th Amendment, it really is a great thing for President Trump in the context of the immigration debate to bring to the forefront. And what I think is so fascinating, Andrew, is that the left and really everyone is debating the merits of this hypothetical executive order without any language actually being put forward. And we've seen historically, just in the last 2 years, that related to immigration, the left always has such a memory lapse because the travel ban executive order was a total win for Trump. And then even the executive order on the child separation at the border, that was manifestly constitutional because all that President Trump did was urge Congress to act. No. And so he has wide latitude here if even an executive order will exist sometime down the road.
So, okay, so it's an election, kind of gambit. He's putting it out there to make sure people are thinking about what he wants them thinking about. Is it, you can't overturn, I mean, even if the 14th Amendment is a little unclear, there's something about, what is the language in there about you have to be born under the jurisdiction of the United States? But yeah.
Under the jurisdiction thereof. And that becomes the question, Drew, that really the Supreme Court hasn't answered. And we can definitely talk about that too. But I think your question is going to be, can President Trump really overturn this by executive order? And it depends. Because through the INA, the Immigration and Naturalization Act, Congress has really deferred a lot of their congressional authority to the president. I don't think that anyone really is arguing that the president can just unilaterally create law. That would obviously be unconstitutional. But what he could do in the context of stopping some of these people from manipulating the immigration system, it really will depend on the language and then how it might be interpreted by now a more conservative Supreme Court.
But now, I mean, it's just hard for me to imagine even this Supreme Court saying, yeah, this executive order overrides the Constitution, or even if the intention is unclear. If they passed a law, if Congress passed a law saying if you the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to you, basically, if you broke into the country. Do you think the court would go for that?
I do, and definitely an executive order can't override the Constitution. But if there is a law that is consistent with the Constitution through Congress, I think they can do it by statute. The issue here, and with all due respect to the ACLU, this is not a question that has been settled. In fact, the only case that's on record that even sort of touches this issue of what the 14th Amendment actually means and if it applies to illegal aliens was a case that's called the United States versus Wong Kim Ark. And that was back in 1898, so actually pretty shortly after the 14th Amendment was passed. And I was actually reading this case this morning because I'm a legal nerd and I do that. And there is a really interesting piece of this case because it dealt with parents who were from China, but they had permanent legal status here in the United States and then had a child. Okay. So they had that relationship. And so the court hasn't ever answered the question, what about a child of illegal immigrants? But what it says in the footnote, which is what we call dicta in a case, meaning the court didn't directly say this is a binding opinion, but it discussed the conversation. And in this, it's talking about the fundamental principle of common law with regard to English nationality at birth, was talking about obedience, faith, or power of the king. And so the principle that embraced all persons within the king's allegiance and subject to his protection, that's what in the jurisdiction thereof means. So this is the interesting footnote. It says children born in England, such aliens were therefore natural born subjects. But the children born within the realm of foreign ambassadors or the children of alien enemies born during and within their hostile occupation of a part of the king's dominions were not natural born subjects because they were not born within the allegiance, the obedience, or the power, or as it would be said at this day, within the jurisdiction of the king. So I think that's, so I think that that's language that a future Supreme Court could go back to and say, this is what really in the jurisdiction thereof means, and it excludes children of hostile occupants of the United States.
And I mean, then there would become a question of whether you could call somebody who had broken into the country a hostile occupant, I guess.
Well, and that would be fairly obvious because if you don't have a legal status, I mean, look at the caravan. That's an invasion. If you come here and you break into the country without legal status, our immigration system already treats you that way, absent if you have amnesty, if you're here as a refugee and you qualify, but then that still gives you that legal status. So if you're here without legal status, it's just like if someone breaks in to my house without having a landlord-tenant relationship, an invitee status, a guest status, then they're here illegally.
That's really interesting, Jenna. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a wonderful birthday.
Thank you so much for having me. Always great to see you.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks.
That's really interesting. But again, an interesting legal issue, obviously an election gambit. Trump hasn't even issued anything. It's just he just put the words out there and they panic and get hysterical. My big point, though, is this moral superiority is an illusion. We have to talk for a minute about Boll and Branch sheets. Because some of you, if you use Boll and Branch sheets, you'll find you're sleeping much better. What I find is I'm lying awake much better because I never sleep. And since I never sleep, I want to be incredibly comfortable. Boll and Branch is a great place to start. 3 most important words for sheets: comfortable, comfortable, comfortable. And that's what they are. They are made with, what makes them unique is each sheet is crafted from 100% organic cotton. That means Boll and Branch sheets not only feel incredible, they also look amazing. But since Boll and Branch sells exclusively online, you don't pay that expensive retail market. That's half the price, twice the quality. You will love these sheets, I know, because I spend hours awake on them every night. Go to bollandbranch.com today and you'll get $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free shipping in the U.S. when you use the promo code Klavan. That's $50 off plus free U.S. shipping right now at bollandbranch.com, spelled B-O-L-L, and branch.com, promo code Klavan. bollandbranch.com, promo code Klavan. But how do you spell Klavan? K-L-A-V-A-N. Boll and Branch, incredibly, incredibly good sheets. Listen, I just want to add this. I want to just conclude by saying that when we are dealing with politics, we're dealing with politics. If you want to see when you're dealing with morality, you're not dealing with any of these people, any of them, none of them, not one of them. I mean, we used to know that politicians were windbags, celebrities were, idiots, and news people were just kind of, Ted Baxter stand-up people. But if you need a reminder, I just have to play this one last thing, which is Don Lemon commenting on how we should not demonize people. Let's play this.
We have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right. And we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There is no ban on, they have the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that?
You ever see that picture of the guy with half a head? Like his whole top of his head is caved in. You notice you never see him and Don Lemon at the same place. My God, this man. Anyway, that is their hypocrisy right there in about 20 seconds of tape. Unbelievable. And that is why we should not let them make us hysterical about any moral issue ever, ever. Okay, let us play the new Lefties Dictionary entry. K is for what?
K. K is for Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan is an organization founded by Democrats after the Civil War in an attempt to overthrow Republican state governments in the South in order to reestablish the Democrat policy of white supremacism. The Democrat Party was founded by former slave trader Andrew Jackson around 1828. As the issue of slavery began to divide the nation, the Democrat Party fought to preserve slavery in opposition to the new anti-slavery Republican Party, led by Abraham Lincoln. When Lincoln won the presidency, the Southern Democrats were afraid he would outlaw their slaveholding. They therefore seceded from the United States, and the Civil War began. When the Republican Freedom Forces of the Union defeated the Democrat slavers of the Confederacy, blacks were freed from their chains. The Democrats formed the Ku Klux Klan and established anti-black Jim Crow laws in order to prevent the former slaves from enjoying their newfound freedom. Even into modern times, Democrat segregationists like George Wallace and Bull Connor fought against the civil rights movement led by Christian Republican Martin Luther King Jr. Although the Ku Klux Klan is now in disrepute among Democrats, modern Democrat policies such as welfare, sexual liberation, and anti-police activism have rendered impoverished African Americans dependent on government largesse, socially hobbled by a plague of illegitimate births, and chained to the murderous violence that is the norm in many Democrat-run cities. Thus, the Democrats have finally accomplished the goals of the Ku Klux Klan by other means. But that's only the meaning of Ku Klux Klan in real life. In leftese, Ku Klux Klan refers to any Republican who disagrees with Democrat policies. Now, you may say, whoa, hold the phone. That would mean that leftese describes a world that is exactly the opposite of reality. Correct. Now you are beginning to understand this subtle and complex language. K is for Ku Klux Klan. I'm Andrew Klavan with the Lefties Dictionary.
You're finally beginning to understand this subtle and complex language. All right, we got the mailbag coming up. We got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. Come to thedailywire.com so you can subscribe. Come to dailywire.com. I always say dailywire.com so you can subscribe. You can listen to our backstage on election night. You can have the leftist tears tumbler. You can have